I just changed all the locks on my house and blocked my entire family's numbers after discovering they secretly planned a family Christmas vacation to Hawaii without me. The family I once thought would always have my back betrayed me in the worst way possible. For years, we were inseparable, celebrating every holiday and milestone together. But recently, my sister Amanda's attitude toward me shifted dramatically for reasons I couldn't understand. The confusion and hurt I felt when I realized it'd been deliberately excluded from our sacred family tradition crushed me. Then came the text that broke me, a group photo of my family on a Hawaiian beach with the caption, "Wish you were here," when they never once invited me. Our family Christmas trips were my favorite tradition. For 12 years straight, we never missed one. Even during college, when money was tight, I worked extra shifts to make sure I could contribute. Despite earning less than my sister Amanda and her husband Tyler, I often ended up covering more expenses because I believed family time was worth every penny. This past Thanksgiving should have been my first clue that something was seriously wrong. Amanda barely spoke to me during dinner, and when she did, her responses were clipped and cold. She rolled her eyes when I mentioned how excited I was about our upcoming Christmas plans. My parents, Frank and Linda, exchanged uncomfortable glances but said nothing about the obvious tension. "You seem quiet tonight, Amanda. Everything okay?" I asked, trying to bridge the growing distance between us. "I'm fine. Not everyone needs to fill every silence with chatter, Eleanor," she snapped, causing an awkward hush to fall over the table. Dad quickly changed the subject to football, while Mom busied herself with serving more stuffing. Neither addressed Amanda's unusual hostility, which only made me feel more isolated. The days after Thanksgiving passed without any family communication about Christmas plans, which was strange, since we usually finalized everything right after Thanksgiving dinner. When I called Mom to ask about flight details, she seemed flustered. "Oh, we're still figuring things out, honey. I'll let you know soon." I didn't think much of it until 3 weeks later when I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram and froze. There on my screen was a post from my cousin showing my entire family at the airport. The caption read, "Annual family Christmas trip about to take off. Hawaii, here we come." My heart stopped. They were going to Hawaii without me? I immediately called my mother, my hands shaking so badly I could hardly hold the phone. "Mom, what's going on? I just saw you're all at the airport heading to Hawaii." There was a long pause before she answered. "Oh, Eleanor, we thought you were too busy with work this year." "Too busy? Mom, I requested vacation time months ago specifically for our trip. I told everyone at Thanksgiving." "Did you?" "I don't recall." Her voice trailed off unconvincingly. In the background, I could hear laughter and chatter. Then I heard something that felt like a physical blow. Amanda's voice, slightly distant but clear enough. "Thank God she's not here to ruin everything." My mother quickly said, "I need to go, Eleanor. The plane is boarding." "Well, talk when we get back," and hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch in complete shock, tears streaming down my face as the reality sank in. My family had deliberately excluded me from our Christmas trip, the trip I helped plan year after year, the trip I'd been saving for since January. And worse, my sister was glad I wasn't there. What made the betrayal even more painful was that Amanda and Tyler had been living in my guest house for the past 6 months. When their home renovation project ran into complications, I offered them my guest house for minimal rent. Even though it meant financial strain for me, it dipped into my savings to help cover my mortgage because I believed in supporting family during tough times. It noticed small things going missing from my main house occasionally, but always dismissed it, assuming it'd misplaced items. Now, as I sat alone during what should have been our family Christmas, those little incidents took on new meaning. My phone dinged with another Instagram notification. More photos of my family enjoying their Hawaiian vacation. My parents, Amanda and Tyler, my aunt and uncle, my cousins, and their spouses. Everyone was there, except me. I texted my best friend Jess. "Did you know my family went to Hawaii without me?" She called immediately. "What? No way! You organize that trip every year." "Apparently Amanda convinced everyone I was too busy with work this year." "That's ridiculous. You've been talking about this trip for months." After speaking with Jess, I decided to text Amanda directly. "I saw the family photos from Hawaii. Why wasn't I invited?" Her response came hours later. "Not everything is about you, Eleanor. Some of us needed a break from your constant perfectionism." Perfectionism? I'd never been called that before. If anything, I was the family member who was most relaxed about plans. The next day, I was sorting through mail that had accumulated over the week and found something alarming. A credit card statement addressed to Amanda, but with my social security number listed on it. Confused, I opened it and discovered thousands of dollars in charges at high-end stores and restaurants. My hands trembling, I searched through more mail and found 3 additional credit card statements, all in Amanda's name but linked to my social security number. The total debt was over $20,000. I felt physically ill. My own sister had stolen my identity. Still reeling from this discovery, I decided to check my home security cameras, which I'd installed after a break-in on our street last year. I rarely reviewed the footage, but something compelled me to look at the recordings from when I worked night shifts at the hospital. What I saw horrified me. Amanda and Tyler had been hosting parties in my house while I was at work. The footage showed them giving tours of my home to strangers, opening my wine collection, and lounging in my bedroom. In one particularly disturbing clip, Amanda was in my kitchen with 3 women I didn't recognize. "This is all Eleanor's," she said, gesturing around. "She's so obsessed with appearances that she spent a fortune on this kitchen renovation, but she can barely cook." The women laughed as Amanda continued. "She thinks her job as a physician's assistant makes her so important, but really she just follows doctors around all day, writing notes." I felt sick watching my sister mock me in my own home to people I'd never met. These weren't just strangers. Based on their conversation, they were friends Amanda had known for years, but had never introduced to me. One of the women asked, "Won't Eleanor mind you using her house like this?" Amanda laughed. "She works overnight shifts 3 times a week. She has no idea, and she's too busy trying to impress everyone to notice what's happening right under her nose." I watched hours of footage showing similar scenes. Amanda bad-mouthing me to our mutual friends, Tyler going through my personal documents in my home office, both of them treating my house as if it were their own playground, while contributing almost nothing to its upkeep. By the time my family was scheduled to return from Hawaii, I had compiled a folder of evidence, photos of the credit card statements, screenshots from the security footage, and a list of items that had gone missing from my home that I now suspected Amanda and Tyler had taken. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. This wasn't just about being excluded from a vacation. This was about my sister systematically taking advantage of my trust and generosity while harboring a level of resentment toward me that I couldn't comprehend. A week later, my family returned from Hawaii. I hadn't responded to any of their messages or social media posts during their trip. My mother called as soon as they landed. "We brought you some Hawaiian chocolates and a cute dress," she said, as if a few souvenirs could make up for their betrayal. I agreed to meet them at my house that evening. I spent the afternoon steeling myself for the confrontation, organizing my evidence, and trying to prepare emotionally for whatever excuses they might offer. When they arrived, they acted as if nothing unusual had happened. Mom handed me a gift bag with the promised souvenirs. Dad gave me a quick hug, and Amanda barely acknowledged me. Tyler hung back, checking his phone as if bored by the whole situation. "How was work while we were gone?" Mom asked casually. "Did you manage to relax at all during the holidays?" "Let's sit down," I said, ignoring her question. "We need to talk." Once everyone was seated in my living room, I took a deep breath. "I want to understand why I wasn't invited on the family Christmas trip this year." Mom and Dad exchanged glances. "We thought you were too busy," Dad said. "You're always talking about your demanding schedule." "That's not true. I requested time off months ago specifically for our trip, and I told everyone that at Thanksgiving." "Well, Amanda needed some space from you," Mom blurted out, then looked embarrassed. I turned to my sister. "Space from me? What does that mean?" Amanda sighed dramatically. "You always make everything so difficult, Eleanor. Always questioning plans, always wanting everything your way. When have I ever done that? I'm usually the one who goes with the flow. See? You're doing it right now, challenging everything I say." The conversation was going nowhere, so I decided to change tactics. I picked up the folder I had prepared and removed the credit card statements. "Can you explain why you've opened credit cards in my name, Amanda?" The room went silent. Tyler suddenly seemed very interested in the conversation, looking up from his phone with alarm. "What are you talking about?" Amanda said, but her face had gone pale. I placed the statements on the coffee table. These credit cards were opened using my social security number, but they're in your name. There's over $20,000 in charges here. Amanda's expression shifted from shock to anger. You went through my mail? How dare you invade my privacy? It was addressed to you but sent to my house. And that's not answering my question. I was going to tell you, she said, her voice rising. It was just temporary. Tyler and I had some unexpected expenses with the house renovation, so you committed identity theft instead of asking me for help. Don't be so dramatic. We're family. It's not like I wasn't going to pay it back. I turned to my parents. Did you know about this? They looked genuinely shocked, which gave me some small relief. There's more, I said, pulling out printed screenshots from my security cameras. While I've been working night shifts, Amanda and Tyler have been hosting parties in my house, going through my personal belongings, and bad-mouthing me to friends. I passed the photos around. My parents looked increasingly uncomfortable, but Amanda's face contorted with rage. You've been spying on us? With hidden cameras? Who does that? They're not hidden. I installed them after the Johnson's house was broken into last year. I told everyone about them. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Amanda stood up, her voice rising to a shout. You're always watching everyone, judging, thinking you're so perfect with your fancy job and your perfect house. I was taken aback by the intensity of her anger. Amanda, I've never judged you. I've always supported you and Tyler, especially with letting you stay in my guest house practically rent-free while I've been struggling to make my own mortgage payments. Oh, here we go. Saint Eleanor always sacrificing, always making sure everyone knows how generous she is. Tyler finally spoke up. Amanda, maybe we should… No, she interrupted him. I'm tired of always being compared to my perfect sister. Eleanor with her perfect career, who never makes mistakes, who everyone thinks is so amazing. I was stunned. This resentment seemed to come from nowhere. Is that really how you see me? To my shock, my father spoke up in Amanda's defense. Eleanor, maybe if you weren't so focused on your career, you'd understand family better. Your sister has been going through a lot, and instead of supporting her, you're attacking her with these accusations. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, she stole my identity. She could have ruined my credit score, which could have impacted my ability to work in healthcare. This isn't about my career versus family. This is about basic respect. My mother, who had been silent during most of the confrontation, finally spoke. Eleanor, I think you're overreacting. Amanda made a mistake, but your response seems excessive. I looked at each of them in disbelief. So I'm supposed to just forgive identity theft and invasion of my privacy because we're family? Would you be saying the same thing if I had done this to Amanda? You've always been difficult, my father said, shaking his head. Always so sensitive about everything. It felt like I was in the twilight zone. My family was rewriting history, painting me as the difficult one when I'd spent my entire life trying to keep the peace and support everyone. I think we all need to calm down, my mother suggested. Eleanor, you need to apologize to Amanda for these accusations and for spying on her. Then we can move forward as a family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They wanted me to apologize? After everything Amanda had done? This conversation is over, I said, standing up. I want Amanda and Tyler out of my guest house by the end of the week, and I expect repayment of all the fraudulent credit card charges. Amanda's face reddened. You can't do that. Where are we supposed to go? Our house isn't finished. That's not my problem anymore. You've lost the right to my help. My father stood up angrily. This is what I'm talking about. Always putting yourself first. If you can't find it in your heart to forgive your sister and move past this misunderstanding, then maybe you shouldn't be part of family gatherings until you've had time to reconsider your priorities. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. I looked at each of their faces and saw no recognition of the pain they had caused me, no acknowledgement of the boundaries they had violated. In that moment, I realized this wasn't a one-time betrayal but a pattern I had been blind to for years. I think you should all leave now, I said quietly. One by one, they filed out of my living room, my mother throwing me a disappointed look, my father shaking his head, and Amanda avoiding eye contact entirely. Only Tyler hesitated at the door, looking like he wanted to say something, but Amanda pulled him along before he could speak. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto my couch, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years and asked my best friend Jess to come over. I needed perspective from someone who wasn't enmeshed in the toxic dynamic of my family. Jess arrived with coffee and donuts, sitting with me at my kitchen island as I recounted the entire confrontation. "I feel like I'm going crazy," I admitted. "They made me out to be the villain for discovering what Amanda was doing, not for what she actually did." "You're not crazy," Jess assured me. "This is classic gaslighting. They're trying to make you doubt yourself because it's easier than acknowledging their behavior." "But why? Why would Amanda do all this? We were always close growing up." Jess sighed. "I've always sensed some jealousy from her, to be honest. You've built a successful career and this beautiful home all on your own. Amanda married Tyler right out of college and has been jumping from job to job ever since. I'd never thought of my life as something to be envied. My career as a physician's assistant was rewarding but demanding. I'd worked hard for my home but had sacrificed a lot of personal time to afford it." "What should I do now?" I asked. "First, you need to protect yourself legally," Jess said firmly. "Identity theft is a serious crime, even when it's family. You need to talk to a lawyer." That afternoon, I met with a lawyer who specialized in identity theft cases. She explained my options, from filing a police report to pursuing civil action for damages. "I don't want to send my sister to jail," I explained. "I just want her to take responsibility and pay back what she owes." "I understand," the lawyer said, "but you should at least file a police report to document the fraud. You don't have to press charges right away, but having an official record protects you if more unauthorized accounts surface." I also consulted with a financial advisor who helped me place a freeze on my credit to prevent any new accounts from being opened in my name. We went through each fraudulent charge, documenting everything for potential legal action. While reviewing the credit card statements more carefully, I noticed a pattern. Numerous charges at casinos and online gambling sites. When I pointed this out to the financial advisor, he frowned. "This looks like someone with a gambling problem," he said. "These aren't just occasional recreational visits." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Amanda and Tyler's constant money troubles, despite their good salaries. Their delayed home renovation. The increasing desperation that might have led Amanda to steal my identity. I called the security company that had installed my home cameras and arranged for all the locks to be changed the following day. Then I texted Amanda. "We need to talk about the gambling charges on these credit cards. Please come to the main house tomorrow at 3 p.m. She didn't respond, but I knew she had seen the message. The next day, while Amanda and Tyler were out, a locksmith changed every lock on both my main house and the guest house. I had the security company change all access codes as well. Then, with Jess's help, I carefully packed all of Amanda and Tyler's belongings from the guest house and arranged them neatly on the front lawn, covered with tarps in case of rain. I placed a large envelope on top containing printed evidence of the identity theft, along with a formal notice of eviction. I also included a police report I had filed that morning, with a note explaining that I hadn't pressed charges yet but would if the debt wasn't addressed. At exactly 3 o'clock, Amanda's car pulled into my driveway. She and Tyler got out, followed by my parents in a separate car. They must have called them for support. When Amanda saw her belongings on the lawn, she froze. "What is this?" she demanded as I stood on my porch. "Your things," I said calmly. "You're no longer welcome to stay in my guest house or enter my property. You can't just throw us out. We have rights. Actually, as informal guests paying below-market rent with no lease, you have very few tenant rights. It's all explained in the letter on top of your things." My father stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Eleanor, this is going too far. You're acting out of spite." "This isn't spite, Dad. This is me protecting myself after discovering that Amanda has a gambling addiction and has been stealing from me to fund it." Amanda's face went white. "That's a lie, is it? The credit card statements show thousands spent at casinos and online gambling sites. Was that also a misunderstanding?" Tyler looked at Amanda with shock, suggesting he might not have known the full extent of her gambling. "You had no right to change the locks without warning," my mother said, trying to sound authoritative. "Actually, I had every right. It's my property, and I have documentation of identity theft and unauthorized use of my home. I've filed a police report, but I haven't pressed charges yet. That depends on what happens next." Amanda suddenly changed tactics, her face crumpling as she began to cry. "I need help, not punishment. If you really loved me, you'd understand that. For a moment, I felt a twinge of doubt. Was I being too harsh? But then I remembered the security footage of her mocking me in my own kitchen, the deliberate exclusion from the family Christmas trip, and the complete lack of remorse during our confrontation. I do love you, Amanda, I said honestly. But love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior or allowing myself to be used. When you're ready to get real help and make amends, I'll be here. Until then, this is where I have to draw the line. Amanda's tears vanished instantly, replaced by rage. You think you're so much better than everyone. You'll regret this, Eleanor. When you're all alone with your perfect career and your perfect house, you'll realize what you've thrown away. She began to scream more accusations, creating such a scene that neighbors came out to watch. My father tried to calm her while my mother approached the porch. Please, Eleanor, she pleaded. Let's work this out as a family. We tried that yesterday, I reminded her. You asked me to apologize to Amanda for discovering her theft. That's not how healthy families function. But where will they go? They have options. They both have good jobs. Their house renovation should be nearly complete. Or they could stay with you and Dad. My mother looked panic-stricken at the suggestion, which told me everything I needed to know about why they'd been so eager for Amanda and Tyler to stay with me instead. As Amanda's meltdown escalated on my front lawn, she began revealing more than she probably intended. You've always had everything handed to you, she screamed. Mom and Dad paid for your college while I had to take out loans. This was completely false. I had worked through college and had student loans I was still paying off. You got the better car, the better room growing up, all the attention. With each false accusation, I began to see more clearly the alternate reality Amanda had constructed to justify her resentment toward me. Tyler finally intervened, pulling Amanda toward their car. We need to go, he said firmly. This isn't helping. As they loaded their belongings into their vehicles, I stood silently on my porch, watching the family I thought I knew reveal who they really were. My father couldn't look at me as he helped carry boxes. My mother gave me one last pleading look before getting into their car. Just before they drove away, Amanda rolled down her window. This isn't over, she called out. Family is forever, whether you like it or not. As their cars disappeared down the street, I whispered to myself, no, Amanda, respect is forever. Trust is forever. Family is only forever if it's built on those foundations. I went inside my empty, quiet house and, for the first time since discovering their betrayal, felt a sense of peace. I had taken back my space, my boundaries, and my self-respect. The road ahead might be lonely, but it was mine to travel on my own terms. I naively thought changing the locks and evicting Amanda and Tyler would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages and calls from extended family members. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I rarely spoke to were suddenly deeply concerned about our family crisis. It quickly became clear that Amanda had launched a campaign to turn everyone against me. According to the family grapevine, I had suffered some kind of mental breakdown and cruelly thrown my sister and her husband out onto the street with no warning because of imagined offenses. No mention of the identity theft, the unauthorized use of my home, or the gambling addiction. I blocked most of the calls after the third cousin suggested I seek psychiatric help, but the campaign didn't stop there. My parents began showing up at my workplace during lunch breaks, creating awkward scenes in the hospital cafeteria as they tried to convince me to make things right with Amanda. She's your sister, my mother would plead, loud enough for my colleagues to hear. Family forgives. Forgiveness requires acknowledgement and change, I would respond quietly. Amanda has done neither. After the third such visit, my supervisor called me into her office. Is everything okay at home, Eleanor? Your parents seem concerned. I had no choice but to explain the situation, mortified that my family drama was now affecting my professional reputation. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, my supervisor said sympathetically. Document everything, just in case it escalates, and let security know they shouldn't be allowed upstairs to the clinical areas. The situation took an even darker turn when anonymous complaints about my work performance began to appear in my personnel file. Vague accusations of unprofessional behavior and concerning interactions with patients that never specified dates or incidents. My previously spotless record was now under scrutiny. In a particularly low moment, I discovered someone had been spreading rumors among our mutual friends that I had developed a prescription drug problem due to my access at the hospital. Friends began to distance themselves, unsure what to believe. Just when I felt most alone, I received an unexpected message from my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister who lived in Colorado and rarely got involved in family matters. "Eleanor, I'm in town for a conference. Could we meet for coffee? Just the two of us." I was hesitant but agreed to meet at a cafe far from my neighborhood. Aunt Susan gave me a warm hug when she arrived. "I wanted to see you face to face," she said once we were seated. "I've been hearing some concerning stories, but they don't sound like the niece I know." I braced myself for another intervention but was surprised when she continued. "Amanda has always been creative with the truth, especially when it comes to you." For the next hour, Aunt Susan shared insights into family dynamics I had never fully understood. How Amanda had always felt in my shadow growing up, despite being the one who received preferential treatment. How my parents had enabled her sense of entitlement because she was more emotionally demanding than I was. "You were always the easy child," Susan explained. "You didn't need constant reassurance or throw tantrums when you didn't get your way. So they focused their energy on keeping Amanda happy, and that pattern never changed." She revealed that Amanda had pulled similar manipulative tactics with other family members over the years. She had borrowed money from Aunt Susan's daughter without repaying it, then spread rumors that my cousin was the one who owed her money. "Your parents have spent years cleaning up Amanda's messes," Susan confided. "There's a family fund that was supposed to be for both you girls' major life events. Did you know about it?" I shook my head. "I thought not. It was set up by your grandparents. Amanda has gone through most of it for her wedding, her house down payment, and various emergencies that never seemed to be clearly explained. You were supposed to have access to the same resources." The revelation stung, but it also helped me understand the bigger picture. This wasn't just about Christmas or credit cards. This was a lifetime of patterns I had been too close to see. "What should I do?" I asked Susan. "Protect yourself," she said firmly. "Set boundaries and hold them. And consider talking to a therapist, not because there's anything wrong with you, but because undoing family patterns is hard work." I took her advice and found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Dr. Wilson helped me process the betrayal and understand that my family's reaction said more about their dynamics than about my worth. "What you're describing is a family system that requires someone to be the scapegoat," she explained during our third session. "When you refuse to play that role anymore by setting boundaries, it threatened the entire system. That's why the pushback has been so intense." With Dr. Wilson's guidance, I began documenting every interaction with my family, saving text messages, recording phone calls, with one-party consent as allowed in our state, and keeping a detailed journal of each incident. This wasn't just for potential legal purposes, it was to prevent me from doubting my own reality when they tried to gaslight me. Meanwhile, the harassment continued. My father left voicemails accusing me of tearing the family apart over money. My mother sent guilt-inducing texts about how Amanda was struggling and how I needed to be the bigger person. Extended family members took sides, with most believing Amanda's version of events because it was louder and more dramatic. But a small number, like Aunt Susan, reached out privately to offer support. They had experienced Amanda's manipulations themselves and recognized the pattern. 2 months after changing my locks, I had established a new routine. I went to work, attended therapy, strengthened relationships with friends who had stood by me, and found peace in my home that was now truly mine again. I had filed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus and was working with a financial advisor to repair the damage to my credit. I rarely responded to my family's messages anymore, and when I did, I kept it brief and factual. "I am open to reconciliation when Amanda acknowledges the identity theft and agrees to repay what she owes," became my standard response to any plea to fix things. Just as life was finding a new rhythm, my mother called with news she thought would surely change my mind. "Amanda is really struggling, Eleanor," she began, her voice heavy with implication. "Tyler's talking about divorce because of the gambling debts." 2 months after changing my locks, I had established a new routine. I went to work, attended therapy, strengthened relationships with friends who had stood by me, and found peace in my home that was now truly mine again. I had filed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus and was working with a financial advisor to repair the damage to my credit. I rarely responded to my family's messages anymore, and when I did, I kept it brief and factual. I am open to reconciliation when Amanda acknowledges the identity theft and agrees to repay what she owes. Became my standard response to any plea to fix things. Just as life was finding a new rhythm, my mother called with news she thought would surely change my mind. Amanda is really struggling, Eleanor, she began, her voice heavy with implication. Tyler's talking about divorce because of the gambling debts. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt strong in my decision, instead of guilty. The fog of self-doubt had finally lifted. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. 2 months of minimal contact with my family had been healing. I'd earned a promotion at work, strengthened my friendships, and even started dating someone new. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based solely on what I wanted, not how they would affect family dynamics. Then my phone rang with my mother's ringtone. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Eleanor, it's your grandmother's 80th birthday next Saturday, she said without preamble. We're having a celebration at the country club. She's specifically asked for you to be there. My grandmother Margaret was one of the few family members who hadn't taken sides in the conflict. She had always been a quiet, dignified presence who stayed above the fray of family drama. Will Amanda be there? I asked. Of course she will. She's family. My mother's tone suggested I was being ridiculous for even asking. But this isn't about you or Amanda. It's about your grandmother. Surely you can put your differences aside for one afternoon. I thought about my grandmother, who had always shown me unconditional love. She deserved to have her whole family present for her milestone birthday. I'll be there, I agreed. But I want to be clear. I'm coming for Grandma, not to reconcile with Amanda unless she's ready to acknowledge what happened. Fine, my mother said curtly. The party starts at 2. Wear something nice. The week before the party, I carefully selected a gift for my grandmother. A custom photo album I'd created with pictures of her with each of her grandchildren over the years, along with handwritten memories of special moments we'd shared. I also bought a new dress for the occasion, wanting to look my best despite my apprehension about seeing the whole family. When I arrived at the country club, I immediately sensed something was off. The hostess directed me to a table far from the main family grouping, where I was seated with distant relatives and family friends rather than with my parents and immediate family. From across the room, I could see Amanda at the center table beside my grandmother, laughing and accepting congratulations from guests. I pushed aside my hurt and made my way to my grandmother, who brightened when she saw me. Eleanor, my sweet girl. She stood to embrace me. I'm so glad you came. I wouldn't miss it, Grandma. Happy birthday. I handed her my gift and was about to say more when Amanda stepped between us. Grandma, Uncle Robert wants to talk to you about the cabin, she said, barely acknowledging my presence. As my grandmother was led away, Amanda turned to me with a cold smile. Nice of you to show up. Didn't think family events were your thing anymore. I refused to take the bait. I'm here for Grandma. That's all. Of course you are. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Always the dutiful granddaughter. I returned to my assigned table, making polite conversation with relatives I barely knew, while watching the main family table from a distance. My parents occasionally glanced my way but made no move to invite me to join them. It was clear the seating arrangement had been deliberate. During dinner, my father rose to make a toast to my grandmother. After sharing warm memories and well wishes, he concluded with, "And now, Amanda has a special announcement." Amanda stood, glowing as all eyes turned to her. Tyler and I wanted everyone to know. She paused dramatically. We're expecting. Grandma, you're going to be a great grandmother. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Amanda soaked in the attention, then looked directly at me from across the room. Some people are meant to have families of their own, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. It's the greatest blessing life can offer. The pointed comment hung in the air. Single and childless at 34, I was clearly the target of her thinly veiled barb. Several guests glanced uncomfortably between us, aware of the underlying tension. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I had come in good faith to celebrate my grandmother. I had maintained my dignity despite being seated away from my family, but this deliberate public attempt to diminish me was the final straw. I stood up calmly and walked to the center of the room. I'd like to offer a toast as well. I said, raising my water glass. The room quieted, curious eyes turning toward me. To my grandmother, whose wisdom and grace have been a guiding light for all of us. You taught me that family means honesty, respect, and integrity. You showed me that love doesn't mean allowing people to mistreat you, and most importantly, you demonstrated that true strength lies in standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. I turned to face the room. Some of you may have heard stories about a rift in our family. You may have been told that I had some kind of breakdown, or that I cruelly evicted my sister over a misunderstanding. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as guests shifted uncomfortably. The truth is simpler, if less sensational. I discovered that my sister had committed identity theft by opening credit cards in my name, accumulating over $20,000 in debt, much of it at casinos. I looked directly at Amanda, whose face had gone pale. I found evidence that she and her husband had been using my home for parties while I worked night shifts, and that she had been spreading lies about me to mutual friends. I reached into my purse and withdrew copies of the credit card statements, holding them up. I have documentation of everything. I filed a police report but chose not to press charges out of consideration for my family. In return, I've been labeled selfish for simply protecting myself from financial fraud. The room was completely silent now. My parents looked mortified, while Amanda's expression had transformed from shock to fury. I came here today out of love for my grandmother, not to create a scene. But I will not allow my character to be assassinated or my boundaries to be portrayed as selfishness. I turned to my grandmother, whose eyes were wide but not disapproving. I'm sorry if this has disrupted your celebration, Grandma. You deserve better, and so do I. I placed my napkin on the table, picked up my purse, and walked out of the banquet hall with my head held high. Behind me, I could hear the buzzing of shocked conversations and Amanda's voice rising in denial, but I didn't look back. In my car, I took a deep breath. I hadn't planned that confrontation, but I felt no regret. For too long, I had kept quiet to maintain peace, allowing others to control the narrative. Speaking my truth, calmly and with evidence, was long overdue. My phone began to light up with messages from family members who had witnessed the scene. Some expressed shock, others offered support, and a few demanded explanations. I silenced my phone and drove home, feeling lighter than I had in months. The truth was finally out, and whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms. 6 months after my grandmother's birthday party, my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. The public revelation of Amanda's actions had fractured the family's unified front against me. Some relatives who had previously shunned me reached out to apologize after verifying my claims. Others doubled down on their support for Amanda, but they were fewer now. My parents' reaction had been mixed. Initially, they were furious about what they called my public humiliation of the family. But as more relatives questioned them about the credit card fraud, and as the reality of Amanda's gambling addiction became impossible to deny, their anger gradually gave way to a complicated grief. Meanwhile, I had made bold changes in my life. I sold my house, accepting a promotion that required relocating to another city 3 hours away. The fresh start was exactly what I needed, allowing me to build a life based on my values rather than family expectations. I was settling into my new office when I received an unexpected email from my grandmother's attorney. She had changed her will just weeks before her death, which had come peacefully in her sleep 2 months after her birthday, leaving me her vacation home on the lake with a handwritten note. To the granddaughter who stood up for herself, use this place to find peace and build the family you choose. Love always, Grandma. The inheritance wasn't about the property itself, though the lakeside cottage was beautiful. It was the validation that my grandmother had seen the truth and supported my stand for self-respect. Her final gift wasn't just a house. It was confirmation that I had done the right thing. As for Amanda and Tyler, their marriage had not survived the public exposure of her gambling addiction and financial deception. The divorce proceedings revealed even more debts than I had discovered, with Tyler claiming he had been unaware of the full extent of Amanda's problem. She had been forced to enter a treatment program when her employer discovered she had been embezzling company funds to cover gambling losses. My mother called one rainy Tuesday evening, her voice sounding older and more subdued than I remembered. "I've been seeing a therapist," she said after an awkward exchange of pleasantries. She suggested I might have enabled behaviors in Amanda that hurt both of my daughters. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of her role that I'd ever heard. That sounds like a positive step, I replied carefully. Your father is going too, though he'd never admit it to anyone else. She paused. We've been doing some hard thinking about why we always expected you to accommodate Amanda's difficulties. And what have you concluded? That it was easier to pressure the reasonable daughter than to set boundaries with the unreasonable one. That we failed you both by doing that. I let her words sink in, feeling a complex mix of vindication, grief, and cautious hope. Is this a conversation about making amends? Or are you still hoping I'll reconcile with Amanda without conditions? I asked directly. I don't know what reconciliation looks like, my mother admitted. Amanda is still struggling, still blaming everyone but herself. But I'm not calling to ask you to fix anything. I'm calling because I miss my daughter who moved 3 hours away, and am wondering if I could visit sometime. Just me. I considered her request. The old Eleanor might have immediately agreed, eager to smooth things over. But I had learned valuable lessons about boundaries. I'd be open to that, I said finally. But I need to be clear about something. My boundary around Amanda hasn't changed. I'm willing to have a relationship with her when she takes responsibility for her actions and makes meaningful amends. That includes financial restitution. I understand, my mother said quietly. This visit would just be about us. 2 weeks later, my mother came to see my new home and city. The visit was awkward at times, but also healing. We talked more openly than we had in years. And though she still occasionally slipped into defending Amanda out of habit, she caught herself and apologized. As Christmas approached, I found myself feeling nostalgic about the family traditions I had lost, but also excited about creating new ones. I invited friends from both my new city and my old one to spend the holiday at my grandmother's lake house, which I had been renovating. The gathering was everything I needed: warm, genuine connections with people who valued me. We cooked together, exchanged thoughtful gifts, and shared stories around the fireplace. It wasn't traditional family Christmas, but it was family all the same, the family I had chosen. On Christmas morning, as we were preparing brunch, my phone rang. It was my parents. "Merry Christmas, Eleanor," my father said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Your mother and I were wondering if we might drive up tomorrow to see you, just for the afternoon." I looked around at my friends, who had brought so much light into my life during a dark year. "I'd like that," I said sincerely. "I have people staying with me, but you're welcome to join us." "People? Not family?" my father asked, a hint of his old judgment creeping in. I smiled to myself. "No, Dad. My family. The people who have stood by me through everything. You'll like them." There was a pause, then my father surprised me. "I'm sure I will. Anyone who's been there for my daughter is someone I want to meet." As I hung up, I realized that this was the real gift of the past year's painful journey. The freedom to define family on my own terms. True family wasn't just about blood relations. It was about respect, honesty, and mutual support. It was about people who celebrated your joys and helped shoulder your sorrows without using them against you. My grandmother had understood that. Her final gift wasn't just a lakeside cottage. It was the permission to create a life built on self-respect and to surround myself with people who honored my boundaries. Standing in the warm kitchen of my grandmother's house now, my house surrounded by laughter and genuine affection, I felt a profound sense of peace. The road to this moment had been painful, but necessary. Sometimes the greatest gift is the courage to start over and define family on your own terms. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What helped you stand firm when others tried to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself? Comment below with your experiences, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is the one that truly supports your growth and happiness.